Welcome back, everybody, to this episode of the A Squared Podcast, a follow-up episode to our first episode on obesity. Today, we are talking about
the treatments for obesity. So people are broken nowadays, and they need to find ways to unbreak themselves. In the last episode, we talked about three main areas that are leading people to be obese. A issue of physiology, psychology, and environment. So physiology, when you go to the doctors, they'll often say to modify things like your diet and exercise, but that's way downstream to the problem. The main issue is much further upstream. So tell us about how we can fix those upstream issues.
So the formula I use whenever I'm consulting somebody on obesity, I tell them, you plus your environmental signals equals obesity. That formula must change. So we can't change you right now, or your genetics, or your biology. Well, maybe with gene therapy we will be able to. But right now you are a set variable. And for 20 years, you've had that same environment. It's led to obesity. You're not going to be able to subtract a small thing to that formula and change the outcome. The environment must be recalibrated, and the environmental signals must be recalibrated. So we must work at the level of the brain structure and look at what signals are coming in from your environment that are telling your brain that we need to eat more and burn less. What are the signals telling your brain that we are in a scarcity state and we must consume calories to save ourselves?
So what are these signals and how do we modify them?
So when I look at somebody, now we talk about the theoretical, we talk about the leptin pathway and how leptin regulates body weight set point, all these different things. But when I talk to somebody, I examine multiple facets of their life and see what was the thing that led this specific person down the obesity pathway. Is it shift work in a completely broken circadian rhythm? Is it poor dietary habits for their whole life? Is it high stress levels? Is it no movement or very minimal movement in their life? And I look at what things we can change.
Okay, so let's break down each of these one by one. Let's start with circadian rhythm. How do we modify that to optimize it so we can lose weight?
So the key thing, there are many zeitgebers. These are time setters that set your circadian rhythm. There's, activity, food intake, temperature. But the biggest and the cream of the crop and the most important zeitgeber, the time setter of your body, is light. We are beings of light, and we fundamentally respond to light signals coming from the outside. And for every animal, every bacteria, every organism on Earth, the sunlight is the regulator of this rhythm. The problem is that we have divorced ourselves from this regulation that should be happening for us. As a result, our circadian rhythms are miscalibrated.
So how do we get the optimal amount of sunlight, and when do we get it?
Yeah. So, you've heard a lot over the last few years on different podcasts on the importance of sunlight. Realistically, if you calibrate your body with the natural phase of rise and fall of sunlight, and this will vary on latitude and where you live on Earth and what season and blah, 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 but you get bright sunlight early in the morning within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up, and you block light at night, you will have a much healthier and fundamentally better biology and circadian rhythm. So what I tell people is, if you look at a hospital room, for example, the rooms and the hallways look the same, whether it's 8 a.m., 8 p.m., midnight, noon, it looks the same. It's uniform. This uniformity is killing you. What you need to have is a very sharp juxtaposition, difference between your day, which is very bright, and your night, which is very sharply dark. Right? So you need bright light from the sun in the day, and we are calibrated to the different variety of lights that the sun gives. Infrared light, the full visible spectrum from red to blue and violet, and ultraviolet light. So you need to get bright light in the morning, and depending on where you live and what your lifestyle looks like after sunset, the ideal would be that you minimize light after sunset and use colors that are closer to the red hue. So if you look at red, green, red, orange, yellow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. That spectrum, if the closer you are to red on that spectrum at night, the better you're going to be and lower in your field. So you think about it, we're adapted to seeing sunlight during the day and seeing firelights, candles, things that are lower in the field and less intense during the night. Now, you have that juxtaposition and you block, most importantly, your phone from the hour before you go to bed and get less blue light from above. That is going to create a difference, a juxtaposition, so your body knows when to make enough cortisol in the morning and when to make melatonin at night, so your body can be in a healthier state and not feel like it's stressed out and needs to consume more food.
So maybe cutting back on electronics, but for some people it's kind of hard. Would blue light glasses help in this case?
Theoretically, people have talked about the blue light glasses and the jury's still out on that. I would say it's probably going to be a net positive. The problem is your skin has melanopsin in it and can sense this stuff. So if you're blocking blue light for your eyes, but your skin are also involved, that's a problem. What you need to do is unfortunately, we don't have incandescent light bulbs anymore. It's all LEDs that are rich in blue light. What I would say is get your phone screens to turn towards a more yellow or red hue. And the phones come with a blue light blocking setting that makes it yellow. You can go further and push it into the red hue, and we can post a link in the comments on that. That further allows you to block the red light, and you should have the dimming mode, the f.lux on your laptop, so you can lower the amount of light. But if you are still scrolling right before you sleep and you're highly stimulated, that's still going to be a signal for your body to be awake.
So maybe wear blue light glasses, possibly get off your phone at night. Yeah. And maybe a controversial thing, in the morning when you're out in the sun, no sunscreen. Sunscreen, does it matter?
We'll get into the debate on sunscreen UV light. The thing is, in the morning, there is no or very minimal UV light to begin with. In most places in the world, there's going to be no UV light in the first hour or two of the day. It's mostly infrared and red light. UV light is more in the middle of the day. And there's an app called D-Miner that tells you how much UV light is available where you are on Earth. So it's not even necessarily a thing. But I would not block any kind of infrared light, because that infrared light is very rejuvenating for your skin. And that's why all these people are doing red light therapy and red light devices. So if you're wearing sunscreen in the morning, NGMI, my friend.
So the dermatologists are going to cancel you.
I don't care. They're too rich anyways.
So circadian rhythm, we kind of touched on that. Get early morning sunlight. Try to cut back on external emitted lights at night. How else can we modify our system to help with losing weight?
I would push your dietary intake, especially of fats and proteins, earlier in the day. So I would try to eat earlier in the morning. I know a lot of people skip breakfast, and intermittent fasting is popular. Intermittent fasting is a tool. You can use it, but if you're really dysregulated, eating earlier in the day will reinforce the light signal. So you get the light signal from the sun, you get movement signal. You go out, you go for a walk, you do some push-ups, you do something to move, and then you eat early in the day. These are all setting your body, telling you, hey, it's time for daytime. And then before you sleep, 2 or 3 hours before, you cut out the food. The problem is most people, they eat the majority of their calories at dinner right before bed, and you wonder why people are obese. Now, this is what I will say. This is what we're going to preface our whole conversation as we dig deeper into different lifestyle things. The more unnatural, and I hate the word natural, but the more unnatural or unbiological your lifestyle is, the more unnatural or pharmaceutical interventions you will need to undo that damage. So if you're living a perfectly, harmoniously, biologically calibrated circadian rhythm lifestyle where you're living on a tropical island, you're only eating unprocessed foods, you're getting sunlight for 12 hours a day, everything's perfectly calibrated, you don't have stress from your job, yeah, sure, you won't need any kind of supplements and therapeutics and injectables to lose weight. But the more you shift away from that and you go to the typical person that's in a cubicle all day and not working out, stressed out, and miserable with their life, the more things you will need, like ozempic, like GLP-1 agonists, to treat your obesity. It's not a simple thing as just like, oh, these people are so obese, they all need to stop eating so much. It's far more complicated because it is the environment that selects for your biology. Your environment is telling your biology how to behave. And if your biology is telling you to gain weight, good luck fighting that.
Okay, so we will get into more of the environmental pharmacotherapy type of things to counteract obesity, but in terms of the underlying structure, hormonally, physiologically with our deep brain, our primal system, you mentioned circadian rhythms, getting appropriate light. Are there any other big things that we can take care of?
Yeah, so movement, like we talked about, movement early in the days is key because it's telling your body it's time for being alert. You want to have some kind of physical activity. Now, the data on physical activity is that working out doesn't really burn that many calories. It's not going to affect you that much when it comes to the calorie balance things, but it will change you fundamentally at a level of where you store those calories. So if you're resistance training, you're more likely to store those calories as muscle versus fat. And as you diet, you want to resistance train so you don't lose muscle. So what a lot of people do is they diet hard, they don't work out, they lose a lot of muscle in the dieting process, and they end up becoming skinny fat. So yeah, they've lost 20, 30 pounds, but 15 to 20 of those pounds are coming from muscle. So they're metabolic even worse now because the ratio of muscle to fat is also very important.
Yeah, and so we'll talk a little bit more about this when we talk about some weight loss drugs, but it's important when you lose weight, you want to maximize ability to lose more fat and less muscle. And so exercising allows you to preserve that.
Right. And then you were just overseas and you were seeing people like in Japan. What's going on there?
And so in Japan, I think there's various things going on. Like I mentioned in the last episode, some other countries, everyone was a lot more slim. Even back in the day, even in America, everyone was a lot more slim. And part of that's due to a couple things. One is perception of food.
Yeah.
I know in certain countries, instead of asking, are you full? They ask, are you not hungry anymore?
Yes.
And so that whole concept of having smaller portion sizes, just eating to satiety, a lot of cultures, a lot of faiths have things of like filling your stomach with a third of air instead of being all the way full. We have this culture in America of trying to eat till we're completely full and bloated, and that's like our goal.
Right, and I think we suffer from success. So as an American society, we have all these technologies, we have all this greatness. We have engineered the best way to make the most palatable and delicious foods. When you eat a bag of Lay's and they feel like crisp feeling, you drink Coca-Cola, you eat a hamburger, everything is perfectly engineered, and we're suffering from technology. So if we had to just cut this into one sentence, what's the cause of obesity? The cause of obesity is technology, and the treatment is figuring out how to skirt your way around this technology. So we've engineered everything where you don't have to walk, you can just drive everywhere. You don't have to work out hard, you don't have to do anything labor because we have technology to do that for us. We've engineered the best foods and the most primal sense, the foods that have salt and fat and sugar in the perfect ratio. These companies, they have food scientists that are working full time to win, to beat you, to get you to buy their products, because it's just a business at the end of the day. So the reality is, you need to get smart, and we get to diet now. We have to outsmart the system.
And a lot of that is kind of fighting some of these cues that scientists are artificially trying to use to make us buy more of their products.
Right.
And so we talked about this in the last episode, but getting more nutrient dense foods, getting lower calorie foods, things like vegetables, fruits,
Meats.
lean meats, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can debate this, but I don't think that we need to go that lean on meats. That's not a popular concept in the modern medical field. But what I will say is the satiating nature of a steak and vegetables is far greater than eating more calories from several hamburgers and fries.
I remember even when losing weight myself, if I had a nice piece of salmon in the morning, it's higher fat technically, but it kept me full the whole day. Right,
because your body's calibrated to respond to unprocessed foods. These processed foods have only been introduced to humans in the last 100 years or so. So our body's very well calibrated to not do that. And, we haven't even touched on this, but people will debate high fat, high carbs, seed oils, sugar, whatever it is. All of that is just much ado about nothing. I think that's all downstream. The reality is it's the combination of these foods in the improper ratio. So what I tell people when they ask me, what should I eat? Tell them, eat what your great-grandma. I used to say grandma, but now grandma's usually fat. But what your great-grandma would recommend, that is a good diet. So meats, vegetables, fruits, honey, milk, regular foods.
And the thing is, you don't have to just eat broccoli and bland chicken breast with no seasoning. You can find a lot of different options that you actually like and incorporate that into your diet and still have a healthy diet.
Yeah, the fundamental aspect of this to make you successful is you have to find diet that works for you. You can short-term, so that's the key thing. You can short-term overcome this and eat disgusting food and lose weight, but eventually your neurohormonal mechanisms will come back online and you will regain that fat because your body will push you back to a set point. So you have to find a life that works for you. So we go back to our formula. You plus your environmental signals equals obesity. If you want to change the environmental signals, it's almost like you're doing an environmental transplant. You must change the environment that surrounds you so that these signals come into your brain and allow you to lose the fat. So one of the things we talked about circadian rhythm. We talked about movement. Like in Japan, when you were there, everybody's walking, everyone's moving places, everyone's very active. The food signals, you have to find foods that taste good, and you can probably reprogram a lot of your palate. The problem with these foods is that we're reprogrammed to like this disgusting processed food. Even though it tastes good, it's really bad for us. So then we're addicted to it. So we have to be able to reprogram to like very healthy, nourishing foods. When it comes to setting these stress levels, if you have a lifestyle that's very stressed out, good luck. You're gonna get obese eventually if you're not taking drugs and all these different things. So we talked about circadian, talked about diet, talked about movement. We talked about sleep under the auspices of circadian.
And real quick, before on diet, I think also it's important. I remember Greg Doucette, one of the big fitness gurus online, mentioned something about taste being like 100% versus 70%. So he has a cookbook, not sponsored, and he was talking about different recipes and saying how like, oh, this gets you like 70% of like the unhealthy alternative. And sometimes that actually is a good framework to look at things. Maybe a healthier version is 70% as good as the unhealthy version, but it's, 1,000 less calories, and you can get 70% of that taste. And what's interesting also is for those of you that have dieted, you probably realize that over time, if you stick to eating kind of like a healthier, less processed, more, plant, vegetable, meat-based diet, that you will eventually start to acclimate. So things that didn't taste good before, like an apple will start tasting like candy almost.
Right.
So over time, there is a light at the end of the tunnel that maybe the foods that are healthier will start tasting good to you, even if earlier they didn't seem that good.
And if you think about it, an apple should taste phenomenally good, especially the apples that are produced nowadays, because that should be the sweetest thing your palate has ever tasted. Apples, honey, these kind of things. If you're regularly accustomed to the foods that existed 300-400 years ago, and you came across an apple orchard and ate apples, you would be in ecstasy. It would be the chocolate factory for you. This would be the thing to be. The problem is we are so bastardized by these food companies that would like you to be addicted to their products by making their products as perfect as possible, almost drug-like, that an apple doesn't taste good. An apple doesn't feel satiating because of these things. So it's really about reprogramming the diet on the physiological and the psychological aspects of it so that you can find a diet that works for you.
So I think that was a good kind of a synopsis of diet and the different things.
And we can talk about diet all day. I mean, we could have like episodes and episodes on what's the ideal thing to eat. And I think we will double click on that in the future.
Maybe A-squared recipes coming soon.
Yeah.
So diet, circadian rhythm, what other big factor?
We talk about movement. We don't move at all anymore. We don't have to walk. And we talked about the body's smart. If you're moving a lot, your body's going to send signals to your brain to have less fat, because you shouldn't be moving all that big mass around, and you're going to have more of a lean mass to fat ratio that is appropriate. So
and interestingly, like people say sometimes, oh, after I work out, I just feel hungry, I'm going to just eat a lot more. But research shows that the big thing with exercise is that the net benefit is that it's an appetite suppressant. So over time, you'll end up eating less calories. And usually once you start exercising psychologically, which is another component, you'll start being in the mood where you feel like, oh, I have one step forward. Now I want to try to work on my diet. I feel good. I'm making healthy changes. So maybe I can improve other areas of my life, and everything kind of follows through with after that.
Right. And what I say is that fat makes hormones and signals, like we talk about leptin, and it also makes cytokines and inflammatory signals. Muscle does the opposite. Muscle makes myokines. These are hormones made by the muscle that signal to your brain positive things. So you want your muscles to be well stimulated. So you keep your muscle mass up, you build good muscle, and you lose the fat at the same time. So you have a better body composition status. And what we suffer from a lot of times is people are skinny fat, or they have a lot of fat, and they're not technically obese on the BMI, but their body fat percentage is 25% plus.
And with exercise, we can go into like different modalities and things like that. But same with diet, pretty much anything that works for you, that you enjoy. If you like CrossFit, if you like powerlifting, whatever that can get you engaged and interested and passionate about the activity, things that will improve adherence and your ability to keep doing it day in and day out, whatever you do that you like and you can keep up, that is really the best form of exercise. As long as you're getting some cardiovascular component, some resistance training component, you'll be getting all the necessary benefits of exercise.
And you try to weave this into your life. For example, I have where I don't take the stairs at all. Don't take the elevator at all at work. I always take the stairs. I park very far away. I walk a ton. I do all my phone calls, all my meetings on the phone when I'm walking outside. Get better ideas from that anyways, but also I'm moving. I will program in. If I'm very busy, I will do a 4-minute high intensity interval training workout. So 4 minutes, and perhaps we'll have an episode where we go behind the scenes and show people how we train and what we do. 4 minutes. Literally, if you did that, that would get you probably 20-30% of the benefits that people would get from doing like 5-6 training sessions a week. 4 minutes of high intensity interval training, and you find what works for you. You find what's fun for you, whether that's racquetball, pickleball, different sports. You find something that vibes with your lifestyle and ends up being something you do with your friends, and that's more likely for you to succeed in it.
Okay, so finding ways to incorporate exercise, finding a diet that you can adhere to, managing your circadian rhythm, getting more daily activity, along with that designated exercise time. Besides that, I think now we can maybe go into...
And then sleep too.
And then sleep.
So we talk about sleep. Sometimes sleep and circadian rhythm are hard to divorce, but sleep is one of the biggest problems that's happening now with people's weight regulation, because sleep deprivation actually leads to a state where your levels of ghrelin, a hunger hormone made by your stomach, go up, and levels of leptin acutely crash. So what happens is, if you think about it, remember, once again, the body's smart. If you're not sleeping, that suggests to your physiology that, hey, we're under some kind of stressor. We need to go hunt and find food. We need to go forage and store this food. Because if you look at animals, the only time animals ever purposefully forego sleep is if they're not eating enough. If they're in some kind of energy deficit, they don't sleep as much, and that's why people with diet will notice that their appetite goes up. So when you're not sleeping, you're signaling to your body, we need to eat more. So for some people, it's fundamentally that simple. Like, you sleep better and your appetite regulation improves, and now you're able to make better decisions in the gym. With your diet, you're able to pick the apple over the piece of candy, and all these different things add up. So what we're summarizing here is that multiple signals are being integrated in your brain, and you have to find the signals that are broken for you, whether that's stress, sleep, circadian rhythm, poor diet choices, and change as many of them as possible so that your brain set point allows you to move into a lower place.
And so maybe you've tried addressing your set point, you've tried all these lifestyle modifications, you've tried exercise, you've tried diet modifications, maybe hired a personal trainer, seen your primary care doctor. After that, what options are available? I've heard of Ozempic and something like that.
Yeah. So, here's the thing. Some people love Ozempic. They want everyone to be honest. Some people are against it. The reality is, the astute clinician and the great thinker knows when to use it, when not to use these kind of things. And we go back to what I said earlier. If you're living a perfectly pristine, ideal biological lifestyle that's in line with the natural order of sun and night, and you're perfectly aligned and everything's good and your diet is unprocessed, you won't need any kind of outside intervention. The reality is, we live in the real world. We have night shifts. We have shift work. We have poor diet choices. We can't cook. We don't have time to go to the gym. People are busy, blah, 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 blah. Everybody's case is different. So the more natural your body is, the more natural interventions you can do. The more unnatural your lifestyle is, and the more processed your lifestyle, the more processed and outside interventions you need for weight loss. So that opens up that if we cannot use environmental changes and environmental modification for the microenvironment, because we're not going to get the FDA, we're not going to get Joe Biden to change the environment of the whole country. But what we can try is the microenvironment. If that fails, now we have to open up the next options that we have in our toolkit to address obesity.
And so the big thing on TikTok and social media, all the actors and actresses are using are the GLP-1 agonists. Would you like to go into?
Yeah. So GLP-1 agonists, these are peptides. Peptide signaling molecules that are made naturally. They signal satiety to the brain. They've been used for diabetes for a long time, and actually were discovered in the saliva of lizards. I have a video on my TikTok on that. And what ended up happening was we noticed that diabetics that use this medication were losing weight. Because it doesn't really treat the diabetes, it treats the metabolic system as a whole. Because it's signaling to your brain like, hey, you can eat less. So diabetics lost weight, their diabetes improved. So then it's now recently in the last few years been FDA approved for the treatment of obesity. Because obesity and diabetes are like overlapping Venn diagram circles. A lot of obese people are diabetics, a lot of diabetics are obese. Some people are in the category where they're not in the overlap. But these drugs work phenomenally for making people lose weight, up to 15-20%. Now with tirzepatide, the second generation of this, and it's a third generation that's even stronger that's coming out, called, I think, retatrutide or something like that. I don't know. These names are interesting from pharmaceutical companies. But nonetheless, if your lifestyle is so unnatural that you can't do environmental modification, guess what? The next thing that we're going to have to open up is medications. So do you think we should use medications for weight loss?
So I think it's, as symptoms are complex, the treatments are complex, and you need to address all the lifestyle things as well as sometimes use some of these medications. I think one thing people hear about, it's this miracle drug that can make you lose weight. And yeah, you can lose 15-20% of weight. But on the other hand, you do need to make sure that some people who just take Ozempic and don't exercise, they end up losing too much muscle mass, and the fat to muscle ratio isn't the best.
Yeah, the way I like to use these drugs, and I've used these drugs in my practice. I've had patients that lose over 100 pounds. I had a guy come in my clinic. He was going to get a gastric bypass surgery, so he had broken, he had arthritis in his knees, very bad knees, couldn't walk. The orthopedic surgeon wouldn't touch him until he lost weight. So then he got sent to the gastric surgeon. That's how the medical system works. The gastric bypass surgeon said, hey, why don't we try some lifestyle modifications first? He came to my clinic. I started him on ozempic, in conjunction with better treatment of his diabetes, in conjunction with a physical therapy program, in conjunction with meeting with a dietitian nutritionist. And within a year, he's lost 100 pounds. He's eating healthier. He's eating portions. He's working out. He doesn't need the gastric bypass anymore. He's lost 100 pounds. And guess what? He just called the orthopedic surgeon and said, I don't need orthopedic surgery because I am now feeling good on my knees, because he lost all the weight and all the pressure on the knees was gone. So these are treatment options. And the way I like to use them is in conjunction with diet and exercise. A lot of the online discussion, and the online discussion is a bunch of pathetic people. But there's a discussion that says, she used diet or exercise, she used medications. They work in conjunction. A lot of people, their set point is so broken, they need a little bit of a nudge by an external medication to help with that set point so they can wait. I look at them as need more than this, and I'll do all these things so then they can lose the weight. I look at them as training wheels. If somebody's 350, 400 pounds, they might need more than just that simple training wheels and more aggressive interventions.
And so I've also seen a lot of patients who have a significant beneficial result losing weight with a semaglutide and GLP-1 agonist, along with the rest of a well thought out multidisciplinary program. Some patients, though, either they have so much weight that they have to lose and they're not able to lose it, or they have some of these possible side effects like nausea, too much gastrointestinal distress, things like that. And then they feel like they need a little bit more help. So maybe we can go into some of the other options of therapy after maybe these medications and some of the other lifestyle interventions haven't worked out.
Yeah, so like I tell people, we do environmental modification, we do medications. If you're 400, 500 pounds and you're going to die within 5 years of a heart attack, and we're going to tell you, hey, just exercise more and eventually you'll get better, we need to do the nuclear option, which would be gastric bypass surgery. Now, these are metabolic surgeries. We can get into the more details in a future time. They're changing your set point as well, because they're changing the way your neuroendocrine system works for signaling appetite. But some people do need these surgeries because they've had such a broken environment for 20, 30 years. You're not going to undo that in a 20-minute primary care appointment. So the reality is we need to have all options on the table, and we need to aggressively fight this epidemic of obesity, because it affects us at multiple levels. And if we're going to be like, beat around the bush and be like, yeah, just eat less and exercise more, good luck. It hasn't worked.
Yeah, and so far modern medicine has been unfortunately missing out on one of the big components that we talked about here of addressing the underlying system causing obesity. So by addressing and modifying some of these variables further upstream, you're more likely to have greater success losing weight and keeping it off, which is one of the hardest things.
Yeah, like if I could wave a magic wand, destroy the whole electronical system of the universe, and suddenly people have to live like they lived 200 years ago, I bet you everyone would lose weight. That would suck, and our lifestyles would be miserable, and we'd have massive famines, and people would die. So it's not great. We love the technology that modern science has given us, but we have to be cautious and realize that some of this technology causes bad side effects for us, and we have to be able to modulate our lives and help the people that can't modulate them for different reasons, and offer them different types of therapeutics, different types of surgical interventions, different types of things. So it's not a black and white, cut and dry, should use drugs for obesity, should you not. It's what do we need to do to fight this aggressively?
So we have so many tools at our disposal. We just need to figure out for you what's the best tool to use in that particular situation. What's the area that you need most help with, and tailor that individually to you. One big problem with medicine and fitness and health online, and if you go to a clinic or see a personal trainers, they often give blanket recommendations. Yes. We need to individualize this for you and your particular circumstance. Yeah, so
if I'm talking to you, you're sitting in front of me, you're my patient, I'm talking to you, and this is not medical advice, of course. But if we were talking, I would say, okay, what things led you to be obese in the first place? We have to do some reverse analysis. Okay, it was my stress, my poor sleep, and I never had a good diet my whole life. Okay, what can we address of these? Can we address all three? Can we address some of them? Can we address one at a time? Can we pull some levers and change some of the things we talked about? If not, and you absolutely cannot do that, okay, let's try some training wheels. Let's try some medications. If it's so severe and you're having cardiovascular disease, diabetes, all these complications from obesity, we might have to pull out the surgery. But nonetheless, a lot of people are like, why are you using medicine for obesity? These same people, if they do not get interventions, whether medical or not medical, they will end up on 5 or 6 medications for blood pressure and diabetes, and for cholesterol, and for heart failure, and for kidney failure. So I'd rather use a medication to prevent that. Ideally, no one is obese and we don't need the medications, but the reality is we don't live in an ideal world, and we have to deal with the circumstances that we are in.
And also, it's important to know that I think some of these changes will be temporary, like maybe a short course of a therapy, like ozempic or something like that, to help lose some amount of weight. But really there has to be an identity shift that happens. You have to change your identity from a person with a certain physiology, environment, psychology, from one state to another, to make sure that you lose the weight and sustain it over your life.
Yeah, it's a psychological and a physiological calibration transplant of who you are and what your environment is to allow you to be in a healthier state. Because the person that you used to be or currently are is not agreeable. It's not compatible with not being obese. So there's got to be some changes that are made. It's not going to be a simple like just walk 3 times a day or just do that. Well, these things will help you lose weight if you change your soda into some sparkling water or something like that. Maybe that takes out 300 calories a day. You end up losing, do the math, lose some weight. But fundamentally, for the people that have struggled with weight and have cut weight before, you realize that this is a shift of biology and a shift of psychology. And we have to use all hands on deck. Because otherwise, if everybody that's obese now becomes pre-diabetic, diabetic, kidney failure, heart disease, our country is going to be broken. Our country is going to be broke. We're not going to be able to pay for anything. And you're going to have to go to the hospital, and it's going to be rationing of care. It's a fundamental disaster. This is not just an aesthetic thing. It's not about you looking hot for your Instagram. This is fundamentally a national security crisis. And literally, they need to have some kind of national defense budget set aside for addressing the obesity epidemic.
And so we talked about various things, how you can address different pathways, how you can change yourself, how you can get therapy or surgery to help lose weight.
And then, so we talked about all these different things. We should probably double click on different types of these therapies in different episodes and go into more depth. Please let us know what questions you have, what ideas you have, what different things didn't make sense so we can clarify in the future. What we wanted this podcast to do is to simplify very complex topics that you're not getting in your primary care office, that you're not getting online. People are trying to sell you things and make money off of you. Unfortunately, as in the pharmaceutical system or the food system or the medical system, all these things, they're just a business asset. So what we want to do is empower you as the person to have the knowledge, the information, the tools to make the best decisions for your own health. So let us know how we can simplify things, how we can make things more clear, what questions you have, and we will see you in the next episode. Thanks.
Thank you.